Second reading of the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Bill, Baroness Stowell of Beeston.
My Lords, I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time. My Lords, it is a huge privilege to be leading this important bill, which will make marriage of same-sex couples lawful in England and Wales. I will go into detail more shortly, but I want to be clear from the outset, this bill isn't just about allowing same-sex couples to marry. It is also about protecting and promoting religious freedom. It is not often that we get to debate and decide legislation which affects people's lives so directly. This bill addresses things that matter to all of us: our personal freedoms, our faith in what we believe, the acceptance of who we are and who we love. Perhaps I should declare from the outset that I am not married. I think that as long as George Clooney is still available, I am prepared to wait. But even though I am single, and I of all people understand that not everyone wants to get married, I believe in the institution of marriage. Like many other people, whether married or not, I believe marriage to be one of the fundamental building blocks of a strong society because of the stability, continuity and security it promotes. I admire couples who make the big decision to marry. Marriage remains, as it has for centuries, the way most people choose to declare their commitment publicly and permanently to the person they love. When we hear two people exchange their marriage vows, whether in a place of worship or at a register office, we know we are witnessing a couple commit to the kind of values we associate with this special enterprise of shared endeavour: loyalty, trust, honesty, forgiveness. We know that through marriage, existing families are extended, as is their commitment and support to new family members. We think that's a good thing. And any of us can choose to do this, unless, of course, we happen to love someone of the same sex. This government thinks that's wrong, and we want to put it right. So much do we believe in marriage and its importance to our society. We want all couples, whether gay or straight, all couples who are prepared to affirm publicly their commitment to each other and all the responsibility and joy that comes with it, to be free to marry. Now, some people argue that civil partnerships have provided same-sex couples equality already, and allowing them to marry is not needed. Well, they are right that civil partnerships provided equivalent legal rights. Indeed, the progress made by the last Labour government in advancing gay rights was massive, and I salute them for all that they achieved. And indeed, I am grateful to the Labour front bench for supporting this bill. But in 2004, Parliament didn't provide same-sex couples with the equal opportunity to marriage itself. Back then, we couldn't conceive that society would allow it. So instead, a separate legal regime was established just for same-sex couples. Marriage, the exchange of vows, and all what that means remained available only to men and women prepared to make that commitment to each other. Less than 10 years on, independent polling, all of which is included in the House of Commons Library research paper on the bill, shows that the majority of people in this country are now ready to open up marriage to everyone. Indeed, support is growing all the time, and we are not alone. Change is happening around the world. As to my own party's position, in 2006, at the first Conservative Party conference after he became leader, David Cameron voiced his support for marriage and equated the commitment of same-sex couples with that of opposite-sex couples. In 2010, the Conservative Party made clear it would consider the case for equal marriage in its Contract for Equalities, which was published alongside the election manifesto. And in 2011, David Cameron said, to wide applause at the Conservative Party conference, that he supported same-sex marriage because he is a Conservative. This coalition government thinks now is the right time to make this change. This government has decided to take this step to allow same-sex couples to marry because we believe that doing so really matters. For gay and lesbian couples, being allowed to marry, to join the institution they too recognise as important, matters because it marks the final acceptance of who they are. Allowing same-sex couples to marry and not separating them out from the rest of society matters to families. For parents especially, it means peace of mind. A gay son or daughter will be able to aspire to the same things as their straight brother or sister and be recognised and respected equally. And my lords, allowing same-sex couples to marry also matters to all of us who believe in the institution of marriage. Marriage, this vital element of our social fabric, stands a much safer chance of remaining important to future generations if we make sure it reflects modern society. We believe marriage will become nothing but stronger if we open the doors to couples who are currently excluded only because they happen to love someone of the same sex. My lords, the bill provides a new freedom for same-sex couples to marry, but theirs is not the only freedom that concerns us. This bill also protects and promotes religious freedom. That is why, as well as allowing same-sex couples to marry in civil ceremonies, in registered offices and approved premises such as hotels, the bill takes an entirely permissive approach in terms of religious marriage ceremonies. It will be for religious organisations to decide for themselves if they wish to marry same-sex couples according to their rites. And some have already said they will: the liberal Jews, the Quakers and the Unitarians. In this way, the religious freedom of these organisations, and perhaps others in the future, is promoted by this bill. Equally, no religious organisation or individual can be forced to conduct or participate in a religious marriage ceremony of a same-sex couple. The religious freedom of those organisations and individuals is protected. The government's public consultation in 2012, which prompted nearly 230,000 responses and became the largest of its kind ever, was important to informing our approach. And since we published our proposals in December last year, we have discussed this permissive approach with a wide range of religious organisations, and I am pleased to report that they are generally content with the protections provided in the bill. The bill has been carefully crafted to contain each element of the quadruple lock which the government committed to last December and which I outlined to this House when I repeated the statement by my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, at the time. And because it is so important, I will explain the quadruple lock again. First, it ensures that the bill states explicitly that no religious organisation or individual minister can be compelled to marry same-sex couples or to permit this to happen on their premises. It provides an opt-in system for religious organisations which wish to conduct marriages for same-sex couples. It amends the Equality Act 2010 so that it is not unlawful discrimination for a religious organisation or individual minister to refuse to marry a same-sex couple. And it ensures that the duty on the clergy of the Church of England and Church in Wales to marry parishioners does not extend to same-sex couples, and that Anglican canon law, which says that marriage is a union for life of one man with one woman, is unaffected. Let me turn now to other rights we all have and which we will continue to have because they are not affected by the bill, most specifically the right to freedom of expression. Some people are concerned the bill will impact on freedom of speech, that people such as teachers or indeed anyone whilst at work will not be able to criticise same-sex marriage. I can reassure the House that this bill does not in any way affect the perfectly legitimate expression of the perfectly legitimate belief that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. Teachers will be expected to teach the factual and legal position when teaching about marriage, as with any area of the curriculum, but they will not be expected to promote or endorse views which go against their own beliefs. It will be unlawful to dismiss a teacher purely for doing so. That said, and as noble lords would expect, the expression of personal beliefs should be done in a professional way, and not in a way that would be inappropriate or insensitive to pupils, some of whom may be gay, transgender, or be the children of a same-sex couple. We are clear that the existing protections for teachers are sound. However, we are of course aware that these concerns exist, and as the Minister for Sport and Tourism explained in the other place, we are continuing to discuss those concerns further with religious groups to ensure we have done all we can to put the position beyond doubt. The same is true for employees generally and what they say about same-sex marriage, whether at work or not. Freedom to express beliefs about marriage is not affected by this bill. Discriminating against someone because they believe or express the view that marriage should only be between a man and a woman is unlawful under the Equality Act 2010. And Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights also guarantees the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. At the same time, I must make equally clear that it is not acceptable for an employee to act in an offensive or discriminatory way because of someone's sexual orientation. My lords, it is wholly wrong to persecute someone for being gay, lesbian, bisexual or transgender. It is not wrong for someone to say they do not believe in same-sex marriage. Some people have also expressed concerns that the religious protections in the bill could be successfully challenged, whether before domestic courts or before the European Court of Human Rights. We are confident that the protections are robust and effective, but rather than me talk about this in detail now, other noble lords far more expert than I in these legal matters will no doubt wish to offer their views during the course of this debate. I will turn now to some other aspects of the bill and to some of the changes made during its passage already in response to our engagement with religious organisations and others. Beyond Part 1, which allows same-sex couples to marry and provides the religious freedoms and protections I've already mentioned, Part 2 of the bill enables an individual to change their legal gender without having to end their marriage. And Part 2 also contains an important new clause, Clause 14, added during Commons report stage by a government amendment. This requires the Secretary of State to arrange for a review of the options and future of civil partnerships in England and Wales. With the government's agreement, this clause was amended to require that the review will begin as soon as practicable and will include a full public consultation. I'm pleased to tell the House that the government is already preparing for this review and will publish its terms of reference before committee stage. Some other changes also made by the government in response to issues raised include fine-tuning the religious protections in specific areas, such as to protect the position of chaplains employed by secular organisations and the Church of England's ecclesiastical law. We've clarified the arrangements concerning Scotland and Northern Ireland and also made some changes to improve fairness, for example, in relation to pension rights, where a married partner has changed legal gender. Even though the government has already made changes to the bill, we continue to listen to concerns and are, of course, willing to consider further changes if necessary to make the protections clearer. Indeed, I should say that I, along with my noble and learned friend Lord Wallace of Tankeness, my noble friend Lady Northover, and the bill team officials, all of whom I have the pleasure of working with, will be glad to listen to the concerns of peers and others with an interest in this bill. My Lords, I am speaking in support of those same-sex couples who want the opportunity to marry because, very simply, this government considers their love and commitment to be no different from that of opposite-sex couples. We believe same-sex couples should be able to marry if they want to, and extending that choice is the right thing to do for them and is the right thing to do for the future of marriage. If we want future generations to support marriage, we need the institution to reflect our modern, inclusive society. I know many noble lords will also speak in support of the bill today, and I am grateful to them. But I also respect those who disagree with me. I understand that many who do not support same-sex marriage do so on the grounds of religious principle. To them, I would point to the religious freedoms the bill protects and promotes and say this: no religion or faith will be required to change its doctrines or practices because of this bill if they choose not to. I also understand some noble lords are unsure whether to support this measure for a range of reasons personal to them. My lords, we all have the right to move at different paces when faced with change. But to those who feel unsure, let me say this. Same-sex marriage is new and different from what we've known up to now, and I'm not trying to say it isn't. But this change, allowing same-sex couples to marry, will not affect the nature or quality of existing marriages or new marriages between men and women. This bill simply extends the opportunity for that same quality to be shared by all couples who honour the institution and who desire it for themselves. My Lords, this bill is a force for good. I commend it to the House. My Lords, I beg to move.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time.
My Lords, I beg to move the amendment standing in my name on the order paper, and first of all would like to thank the noble Lord the Minister for setting out the Government's position on this, what is by any stretch of the imagination a contentious bill. "I don't know what you mean by glory," said Alice. Humpty Dumpty smiled contemptuously. "Of course you don't, till I tell you. I meant there's a nice knock-down argument for you." "But glory doesn't mean a nice knock-down argument," Alice objected. "When I use a word," Humpty Dumpty said in rather a scornful tone, "it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less." And my Lords, I would suggest that if we substitute the word marriage for glory, we get somewhere very close to the essence of this debate today. As Humpty Dumpty might have said, there's a nice knock-down argument for you. Marriage means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. And if we move away from Lewis Carroll's Alice and back through the looking glass, we find ourselves in a world where an ill-considered bill seeks to overturn centuries of tradition, heedless of public opinion and the views of religious leaders, and blind to the laws of unintended consequences. It seeks to alter totally the concept of marriage as we have always known it. It seeks to divide a nation with an argument that hides behind the concept of equality, when in reality it is about sameness. And it stands on its head all considerations of electoral mandate. I am conscious, my Lords, that around 90 speakers await their turn to speak today and tomorrow, and I will deal only very briefly with the essential elements of the arguments against the bill, but take in turn four things: the concept of the rule of the majority, the impact of the bill on society, what I believe to be the flawed process that it has undergone so far, and finally, last but by no means least, the question of whether it is proper or appropriate to vote this bill down at second reading. Firstly, my Lords, the question of the extent to which a civilised society should accede to the wishes or the desires of a very small minority in its midst. In the debate on the humble address on the 9th of May this year, an impassioned reference was made to the plight of homosexuals in Uganda and in other repressive regimes, which seemed to suggest that if we were to defeat this bill, this country could quickly regress to a state something approaching that in Uganda and elsewhere, where homophobia is prevalent. Nothing could be more fanciful, and nothing could be further from the truth. Like many other members of your Lordship's House, I have for many years championed the extension and the protection of minority rights, including homosexual rights and equality, and I have seen and applauded this country change its attitude towards homosexuality from thinly veiled intolerance 50 years or so ago to a position of understanding and acceptance today. With the introduction of civil partnerships, we've seen the legal rights of homosexual couples put on a par with those in a conventional marriage, and with all the financial benefits available to both groupings. And indeed, those in a homosexual civil partnership are significantly better off in that respect than family members who live together without the benefits of such a partnership. Doubtless we shall hear more of that as the debate progresses, more about the two sisters living together, or the elderly parent and the unmarried daughter in the same household, all of those unable, of course, to enjoy the same financial benefits available to those in civil partnerships. And in that respect, homosexual equality has outstripped equality for those in family relationships. But this part of the argument, my lords, is much more about the lengths to which a society should go in order to embrace the demands from very small minorities. The utilitarian approach of Jeremy Bentham, the greatest good for the greatest number, where a simple majority carries the day, was challenged first of all by John Stuart Mill, and then for other theological and jurisprudential speakers and writers in the 19th century. And very sensibly, it has been moderated over the years to a point when any society wishing to be thought of as civilized, wishing to be thought of as tolerant and mature, is judged by the degree to which it can accept minority views, even when those views fail to accord absolutely to the norms and the views of the majority. But there must come a point when provided full equality for all under the law is guaranteed, and this, I would suggest, is perhaps the nub of this argument. When full equality under the law is guaranteed, the majority view should prevail, especially when the minority is tiny and the overwhelming majority are affronted. It is all a question of balance, wisely and not least sensitively applied. The present danger of redefining marriage could well turn out to be counterproductive, because tolerance can be overstretched. Look to contemporary France for an example. The similarities of this country are numerous, a country with much the same population as our own, still coming to terms with a revised role in the world, an old, enduring national religion, financial problems, leadership questioned. Same-sex marriage has recently been forced through the French parliamentary process, with the result that mass demonstrations and occasionally riots are taking place in major cities in that country. And worse, the incidence of serious homophobic violence has markedly increased. Now, I don't foresee violent street demonstrations in this country, but I do fear, my lords, that the bill, should it become law, could well create such opposition to homosexuals in general that the climate of tolerance and acceptance in this country that we have all championed and supported and seen flourish over the years could well be set back by decades, certainly for a long time. Let me move on. In headline form only, let me pose a question or two. What is the impact of the proposed legislation on society? A change in the law, I would suggest, would herald uncertainty in a number of areas rather than certainty. And I'll touch only briefly on those aspects now, confident that others who follow, the 90 or so speakers who follow me, will explore some of these issues in much greater depth. Marriage. Marriage between a man and a woman has been a part of life for centuries. It predates nation, it predates church, it predates the law. The lifelong commitment of a man and a woman is part of our history and our culture, and the evidence abroad, for example, in Spain, shows that a redefinition of marriage actually undermines support for marriage in the wider society. There, marriage rates have plummeted. Nobles may advise their own theories as to why this has occurred in Spain and elsewhere, but the facts are there for all to see, and I think it is reasonable to conclude that redefining marriage is one contributory factor. In the field of education, very real fears exist that teachers who fail to endorse same-sex marriage could be dismissed. The Noble Lord the Minister has touched upon this and other similar issues. Government reassurances that this will not be the case have been challenged as naive by leading counsel. Parents will not have a legal right to withdraw children from lessons that endorse same-sex marriage in the curriculum. The effect on schools undoubtedly will be divisive, and we should reflect on the fact that calls have already been made for children to act out gay weddings in class. I have to hand here in the chamber today an opinion by leading counsel prominent in employment law, who concludes that the bill would create a duty to promote or endorse the new definition of marriage and sex education, not just to explain it. And furthermore, he advises in that opinion that schools could discipline a teacher for failing to teach positively about same-sex marriage alongside opposite-sex marriage. Employment law is not likely to protect, I suggest, those who, as a matter of conscience, refuse to endorse the new law. And again, some noble lords from the legal profession will want to expound opinions at length on this. But the very fact that matters like this are so strongly disputed, with leading counsel on both sides of the argument, must show, I suggest, that there is a legitimate concern that cannot be shrugged off by mere rhetoric. The well-being of children within marriage is a matter of very serious concern, certainly for those who accept the view that the best family grouping in which to grow up is a staple environment with two married parents, one of each sex. And these and other major factors will be hotly debated today and tomorrow, and they will highlight the sharp divisions that exist on almost every aspect of this bill. So, my lords, if divisions exist, and they do, we should ask to what extent has the government considered the totality of the problem. In a matter as fundamentally important as this, and potentially so contentious, one could reasonably have expected any government with any pretensions at governing by consensus to have conducted deep and thoughtful research before drafting legislation. This bill is hallmarked by the very lack of that. A royal commission or another similar learned group might have been expected to call on the very best minds from the fields of theology, philosophy, sociology, jurisprudence, finance, in order to take a long look at all the implications, to identify the pros and cons, and to make mature recommendations. The government did nothing of the sort. Instead, it seems to have relied on old, often partial research and opinion that gives only a fragmentary picture of the problem. There was no royal commission. There was no committee of inquiry. There was no mention of the bill in any party manifesto prior to the last general election. There was no report from any parliamentary select committee. The leader of the Conservative Party declared that he had no plans for such a bill when he was questioned on Sky Television only 3 days before the general election. There was no green paper, there was no white paper, there was no pre-legislative scrutiny. It was not included in the Queen's speech either last year or this year. But after its introduction a few months ago, the results in the recent local elections were catastrophic. Around 450 seats were lost by the coalition parties, with all the analysis showing that the bill was a significant factor in the swing of voters away from the main parties. Its progress through the House of Commons was inauspicious. The backbench contributions at second reading were limited to only 4 minutes. The government then delegated the bill to a committee of 19 hand-picked MPs rather than to a committee of the whole House. Its membership was stacked 15-4 in favour of the bill, and not a single amendment was accepted by the government. Committee debates were limited to only 5 days, in contrast to the hunting bill, when the standing committee lasted for 15 days. The main parties announced a free vote, but there's a question mark over the freedom of that vote. In a letter signed by 15 MPs and circulated on the 15th of May, that letter cast serious doubts. I quote, "Varying degrees of coercion were obtained, with threats made, for example, to an MP's future political career or withdrawal of party support at future elections." So the apparent solid majority of the bill in the other place must be considered, in part at least, in that light. The government consultation exercise, that was about how to introduce the changes and not whether to do so. To put it bluntly, the results were rigged. The figures given by the government indicated a total of 228,000 responses. with 53% said to be in agreement with the bill and 46% against it, about even, tilting slightly towards approval for the bill. But that ignored two critical facts. Firstly, the responses in favour were largely connected on the internet, anonymously, with no check as to whether the respondents were resident in the UK, and no check on multiple entries from single respondents. And secondly, the government accepted a signed petition collected by the Coalition for Marriage and arbitrarily counted that petition as one vote, deliberately ignoring the fact that it contained 509,000 verifiable signatures. That petition has now grown, I'm told, to 660,000 signatures, but at the time of the closure, 509 verifiable signatures. And had that number of 509,000 been included, as clearly it should have been, it would have shown 83% of the respondents against the bill. This considerable public opposition is borne out by many reliable opinion polls. Some polls, of course, suggest the opposite, but many polls have failed to make clear the existence of civil partnerships in posing the question to those being polled. I should say at this stage that since my name became linked in public with opposition to the bill and I became something of a lightning conductor in public for all of these issues, my email and postbag falls just short of 1,000, of which 38, I counted them this morning, 38 are in favour of the bill, the remaining almost 1,000 are for it. And I think many noble lords in this House have had very similar results, if not in those numbers, certainly in proportion. And opposition from formal religious groups divide on the same lines. Quakers, Unitarians and liberal Jews, of course, support the bill, but we should remember that they together represent less than 1% of the religious community. The largest bodies, the Church of England, Roman Catholic, Sikh, Muslim and others, all adamantly oppose it. Can I turn last to the question of the vote at second reading? Understandably, some noble lords have queried whether it's proper to challenge a bill in this way at second reading in your Lordship's House. And I fully understand that question, and I recognise and support the long-standing tradition, the proud long-standing tradition in this House, to take particular care over every aspect of any bill and give it a full and fair examination before voting. But that only holds good in normal circumstances. And the circumstances we face today are abnormal. I'm advised by the clerks that it is perfectly proper to vote on second reading. The 2006 Joint Committee on Conventions affirmed that the House of Lords retains the power to reject government bills in free vote situations. Votes against a bill at second reading are unusual, but they're not unknown, and examples that closely parallel these present circumstances are the War Crimes Bill, for example, and the Sexual Offences Amendment Bill, both of them just over 10 years ago, but both free votes without a mandate from a manifesto. The Health and Social Care Bill in October 2 years ago is the most recent and reliable example. So, my lords, if we can do it, and if we have done it, why oppose this bill at this stage? And quite simply, I contend that this bill is in a mess. Ill thought through, lacking support in the population as a whole, and likely to antagonise or even inflame public opinion. It has nothing to do with equality, which is already in place with civil partnerships. It attempts to dignify admittedly very small minority partnerships with the description marriage, a term that has been understood differently for centuries. And if that was not enough, there is more. This House is asked to debate and examine a bill that has not yet come anywhere near identifying all the consequences of change. The official government estimate of the numbers of amendments to existing legislation that would follow should the bill become law is, in their words, at least 8,000. They are still counting. It's no good telling me, my lords, that there is provision in the bill to take care of that. because the experience in Argentina, where similar legislation was passed in 2010, is chilling. In a paper provided by Dr. Ursula Bassett for one of the major universities in Argentina, and I will give the title of that university to the Hansard writers, Dr. Ursula Bassett explains the changes now being debated in that country, having passed legislation similar to that which is on the table in front of us, in order to establish a redefined civil code. She said this: "It quickly became clear that legalizing same-sex marriage required a revolution to our internal law. It impacted laws regulating public order, identity, gender, rules of kinship, filiation, marriage, names, marital property arrangements, divorce, alimony, parental rights, succession, domestic violence, adoption, artificial reproductive techniques, surrogate motherhood, liberty of conscience, criminal law, tax law, employment law, amongst other topics. All of these subjects," she said, "would need to be attuned to the gender-neutral paradigm. Same-sex marriage law in Argentina has turned the law upside down. No stone has remained unturned." And that, my lords, is what we face when we consider this bill, were we to consider this bill in committee, report and third reading, without at least some of that information at hand. Without some of it at hand, frankly, it would be like wandering into the dark blindfold. And hard on the heels of the procedure today in second reading, it looks as if we may be denied the chance of properly considering the bill in committee, since to date only 2 days have been allocated by the usual channels. And if that was not enough, as I conclude, one last word, even worse than that, we know that as the bill left the House of Commons on the last day before the recess, the government announced its intention to conduct an immediate review into the whole issue of heterosexual civil partnerships. Clause 14, introduced as a manuscript amendment. How can we be expected to consider turning the law of marriage on its head without taking full account of the implications of heterosexual partnerships as well? If we must consider changing marriage, let it be with all the facts at our disposal, all the consequences identified, all the financial implications worked out, and all the social advantages and disadvantages known, and not blunder into a legal, theological, moral and sociological minefield. My lords, I ask that this bill should be defeated now and not allowed to take up valuable parliamentary time in the later stages when so many other pressing matters demand our attention. I believe it should be defeated. I believe the concept should be sent back to the drawing board, because this is too serious and too important a matter to be introduced on a whim and handled in such cavalier fashion. The House of Lords, our House, is the final check, perhaps the only check, on the power of the executive. I believe it should use that power sparingly, but on this occasion, use it positively. I beg to move.
The original question was that this bill be now read a second time. Since when an amendment has been moved to leave out the words "from that" to the end and insert "this House declines to give the bill a second reading." The question I therefore have to put is that this amendment be agreed to.
My Lords, we live in a civilised, tolerant society, not in Alice in Wonderland, and I am proud to open this second reading debate on behalf of the opposition benches. I know that a small minority of my noble friends are against this bill on same-sex marriages, and naturally I respect their views. But the majority on my benches, alongside the Shadow Cabinet, Labour's National Policy Forum and the Labour Party Conference, warmly support both the bill and the debate, which enable us to recognise and affirm the loving, lasting commitment of couples who love each other. Couples who must include the noble Lord Brown of Eton under Haywood, who with his wife is today celebrating their golden wedding. I'm sure that the whole House will join me in sending them our heartiest congratulations. I pay tribute to my right honourable and honourable friends and those of all parties in the other place who enabled the bill's safe passage, many of whom showed considerable political courage. This is, I believe, a hugely important milestone in terms of equality, respect and dignity in our society, which rightly values stable relationships within the framework of marriage. I must also thank the noble Baroness Stowell of Beeston for the excellent introduction to the bill. I hope that George Clooney was listening, of course. But I also thank her for making herself available at all times to discuss concerns and answer questions. From experience, I know that it is particularly challenging for a whip to take responsibility for a controversial piece of legislation, and I know that she will do a terrific job. Yeah. In an ever-changing world where turmoil and instability are too often the norm, it is a cause for celebration when two people of either the same sex or the opposite sex wish to commit their lives to each other through marriage. I am the product of a happy marriage, and I had the good fortune to enjoy nearly 30 years of marriage. Our aim, like that of so many other couples, was to grow old together, to support each other in sickness and in health. We had our ups and downs, but the fact that we were married increased our resolve to make our relationship work, and it was the framework within which we wanted to raise our children. Of course, I have friends who are single who are great parents, and friends who have lived together for many years who are wonderful parents, like my noble friend the Chief Whip, although I'm delighted to say that on Saturday he and his partner Jill are going to be married. I celebrate that, and I would like to be able to celebrate the marriage of gay friends with or without children. Last week, I thought a lot about marriage, not just about this bill, but because I was choosing a wedding dress with my daughter Charlie, and we talked a lot about marriage, which she described as an important ritual that would enable her to make a commitment to the man that she loves in front of family, friends and our community. If Charlie wanted to marry Catherine instead of Cain, would I feel any different? No, my lords, I would not. And I would want other parents to have the same joy as me in celebrating the marriage of their children, whether they love people of the same sex or the opposite sex. Some people ask why this bill is necessary when we already have civil partnerships. Often I have to say the same people who opposed partnerships when we introduced them in 2004. Civil partnerships were a fantastic step forward and continue to be a great source of joy and security, but some people wish to choose marriage. It has a special status in our society, historically and symbolically, and it represents a very particular value that the state has placed on the relationship. I well understand that this bill has caused anguish for some people of faith who have concerns, either because of the impact of the bill on their faith or on the grounds of faith. I respect all genuine concerns, although clearly not those which are rooted in homophobia, and I'm sure that our consideration of this bill will be conducted with our usual tolerance, respecting our differences. I have to say, however, that I simply do not understand those who say that equal marriage can harm or undermine marriage between a man and a woman. Surely, if we value and cherish marriage, we would want all those who wish to be married to be able to do so, and we would welcome the fact that marriage would be strengthened by opening it up to more couples. Surely we should be encouraging our young people who see the love and strength their parents draw from their marriage to aspire to that same commitment, regardless of whether it is with another man or another woman. There has been much discussion about whether or not there are sufficient protections for religious organisations. Just like equality, freedom of religion is central to a human rights-based society, which is why it is absolutely vital that the bill doesn't impose an obligation on any faith group to conduct same-sex marriage. The noble Baroness, the Minister, has spoken in detail about the quadruple lock, and we are satisfied that the protections the government has put in place in this bill are sufficient to ensure that no faith group will be at risk of a human rights challenge for refusing to solemnise same-sex marriage. The House will naturally carefully scrutinise the protections contained within this bill for religious freedom. I welcome that, and I look forward to the contributions of the noble Lord Pannick and my noble friend Baroness Kennedy, who are crystal clear in their evidence to the Public Bill Committee. I also look forward to the contribution of the Most Reverend Primate to this debate, but I know that the Church of England has rightly been working closely with the government, and I am pleased that there's agreement that the safeguarding of the position of canon law has been achieved, and that the quadruple locks offer the necessary protection. I know that the bishops now warmly support civil partnerships, and I've read of the Bishop of Salisbury's endorsement of same-sex marriage, both matters to be celebrated. I've also had excellent discussions with some Right Reverend prelates in which we all agreed that whilst from their perspective the result of this bill would not lead to the sky falling in or family life falling apart, from my perspective it would not be a panacea for relationships, be they gay or straight. My Lords, I also take this opportunity, forgive me, to send our best wishes to the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of York, for a speedy recovery. Naturally, I'm glad that the Government has listened to concerns of the Church of Wales, which were raised by my colleagues in another place, and which resulted in an amendment to ensure that the Lord Chancellor would have no power of veto of the Church's decision, should they in future wish to provide for same-sex marriages. The position of the Quakers, Unitarians and Reformed Judaism is absolutely clear, and I am delighted that this bill will enable them to opt into performing same-sex marriage according to their religious rites. Last week, whilst thinking about this second reading, I happened to watch The Times of Harvey Milk. I wept at what one might call a chilling reminder of the pain and suffering that gays and lesbians endured a few short years ago, their lives blighted by society's attitude towards their sexuality. That was 1970s America, but in this country people were locked up or punished for loving someone of the same sex in the 1960s. The Conservative government introduced Section 28 in 1988, and it was not repealed until the Labour government came to power, which had a proud record in making progress against discrimination and in favour of equality, and I'm grateful for the generous comments from the noble Baroness. As well as civil partnerships, we equalised the age of consent, ended the ban on LGBT people serving on our armed forces, made homophobia a hate crime, outlawed discrimination in the workplace and in goods and services, and did so much more, most controversial at the time, but which now have widespread support. We've come a long way, but there still needs to be some cultural shift. This bill is not only hugely important for same-sex couples who wish to marry and for transgender people who are in a marriage, but it can play a critical role in driving attitudinal change. As noble lords will be aware, 20,000 homophobic crimes are still committed in this country every year, and many children suffer homophobic bullying. Not just children who may be growing up to be gay, but also those with lesbian or gay parents. 95% of secondary school teachers have reported hearing anti-gay language in their school. The same-sex marriage bill will, I believe, be a useful tool in tackling these attitudes, not just ensuring legal equality in the eyes of the state, but encouraging societies to celebrate the identity, the relationships, the commitment, and the love that lesbian and gay people share. There are some outstanding issues in relation to the bill which were raised in the other place, which have not yet been resolved in the bill. Firstly, pension rights, which are the subject of considerable debate. Currently, the bill provides for less generous pension rights for same-sex married couples than those of opposite sexes in respect of survived benefits. In the Commons, we called on the Government to come forward with an immediate review into the implications of equalising pension rights, and we will be urging the Government to do this during the course of the bill. Secondly, humanist marriages. Our front bench supported amendments to allow couples to have humanist marriages in England and Wales, as almost 3,000 choose to already in Scotland. At report stage in the other place, the Attorney-General raised new concerns about the amendment's compatibility with the Human Rights Act. However, we hope to try and resolve these issues at committee stage in this House. Thirdly, transgender issues. The bill will enable individuals to change their legal gender without having to end their marriage, righting a big injustice in our society. We welcome these amendments brought forward by the Government at report stage in another place to protect pension rights for spouses who change their legal gender as a result of the bill, as a result of issues raised by my colleagues and others during the Public Bill Committee. However, we will be looking carefully at further amendments that may be brought forward in relation to transgender marital issues. With regard to heterosexual civil partnerships, a matter of much debate in the Commons, we are pleased that the Government has now committed to an immediate review into the introduction of heterosexual civil partnerships, and I welcome the fact that the terms of reference of this review will be available before committee stage. My Lords, there were long debates on the issues of teachers and registrars. Our views on this are clear, but it is of course right that these issues of great importance should be debated fully in your Lordship's House. I'm grateful to the Government for giving extra time for the second reading debate and for ensuring that the vote will take place at a proper time. there will be some in this House who vote in favour of the amendment tabled by the noble Lord Dear and against this bill. And I would respectfully remind the noble Lord Dear that proposals to fragment our National Health Service did not appear in any of the party manifestos nor in the coalition agreement. And perhaps more importantly, I refute the noble Lord's suggestions in relation to the support for this bill. The latest YouGov polling shows that 71% of people support same-sex marriage, including 3 out of 5 people of faith. The noble Lord also alleged that the bill would affect divorce rates. It is true that divorce rates in Spain did increase, but that was because they liberalised their divorce laws at exactly the same time as introducing same-sex marriage. My Lords, in respect of the composition of the Public Bill Committee and the allegations that the membership was stacked, the only reason that the Bill Committee was thus constituted is that the same MPs had previously insisted on a free vote across the Commons. This meant that the committee membership represented the very heavy Commons vote in favour of the bill at second reading. And in terms of emails and postbags, I'm sure that those who are against this bill wrote to the noble Lord Dear, but those who are in favour of this bill wrote to me, my lords. So, I think we should question the comments made by the noble lord to that extent. However, all in all, my lords, I trust that following the detailed and carefully scrutiny that this House will give, noble lords will be convinced both by the safeguards in terms of religious faith and by the arguments in terms of removing discrimination and extending the dignity and the joy of marriage to same-sex couples. I firmly believe that our society will be strengthened when more couples are able to choose to make a lifetime commitment to each other, and when all members of our communities are able to celebrate their identity and their relationships within the institution of marriage.
My Lords, I declare an interest. Many years ago, I had the great good fortune to meet someone. She and I have loved each other ever since. Apart, that is, from the occasional spectacular argument, usually about driving or DIY. And as the slogans and the T-shirts used to say, it happens in the best of families. It was therefore with great relief that I read the letter from the Bishop of Salisbury to the noble Lord Alley, in which he said, whilst marriage is robust and enduring, what is meant by marriage has developed and changed significantly. There have been many changes to what constitutes marriage over the years. In 1836, there was the change that allowed civil marriage. In 1949, there was the change that made the minimum age for marriage 12 years old. Those changes came about because of campaigns that were run by minorities and resisted by majorities for a very long time. But they're not changes that would now be overturned. What we're doing today doesn't undermine any existing or future marriage. What it does is it extends the status of marriage to gay men and lesbians who want to make a public commitment in the presence of their families and their friends, and sometimes their co-religionists. And it reflects the wishes of those people who don't today just want to tolerate lesbians and gay men. They want to celebrate and support them as people in their own lives. Some noble lords say that allowing gay people to get married is unfair because it leaves other sorts of relationships, such as those as siblings, without the same legal rights as those who choose a marital status. Well, if enabling a gay marriage will be unfair to another relationship, such as two sisters, then existing marriage laws are unfair. But the thing is, my lords, I think we all understand that relationships which adults enter into voluntarily are wholly distinct from relationships which are determined by consanguinity. If family members could become civil partners, it would be really easy for a bullying parent or a sibling to force a member of their family into a relationship simply in order to protect property. I don't think any of us want to legislate for that. A great deal has been made about the issue of conscience laws for registrars and other public servants. My lords, I grew up in a time and a place when discrimination in public services on the grounds of religion was not uncommon. It caused resentment and it divided communities. The idea that public servants should decide, according to their personal beliefs, who does and does not receive a public service is just wrong. Taxes are levied on a non-discriminatory basis, and services should be provided on a non-discriminatory basis. There are some opponents of this bill who say we shouldn't be addressing this, not when we've got all these huge economic difficulties. I disagree, because discrimination always comes with a price tag. In the United States, hundreds of employers, some very small, some of the biggest in the world, like Nike and Microsoft, are assisting legal cases in support of gay marriage. These employers need to recruit and retain the most productive staff to make their businesses competitive, and that includes LGBT staff. These businesses want their gay staff and employees to be able to focus on their jobs, not to be dealing with the inequality that means that they and their families always have to sit at the back of the bus. My lords, if those businesses have figured out that same-sex marriage is good for business, then so should we. My lords, this is a bill about religious freedom. And as somebody who was raised a Methodist, that's something that has been important to me all my life. No religion will be compelled to offer a same-sex marriage. But on the same basis, it would be wrong to deny the rights of those religious organisations who wish to extend their fellowship to gay people and their families. My lords, there is no impediment which would prevent this House from doing its job and subjecting this bill to the high standards of scrutiny that it would apply to any other. And in doing so, members of your Lordship's House will think long and hard, as they always do, about what's right and in the best interests of our society. I and many of my colleagues in these benches look forward to joining with noble lords from all parts of the House to ensure that gay people and their families are afforded the dignity and respect which others take for granted, and that families, faiths and communities can grow stronger together as a result.
My Lords, the initial proposals, when published at the end of the autumn, have needed much work to get them into today's form. Much of that work has been done through detailed legal effort and discussion, and I'm deeply grateful to the DCMS teams and especially to the Secretary of State for the thoughtful way in which she has listened and the degree to which she has been willing to make changes in order to arrive at the stage we've reached today. We all know, and it's been said, that this is a divisive issue. In general, the majority of faith groups remain very strongly against the bill and have expressed that view in a large number of public statements. The House of Bishops of the Church of England has also expressed a very clear majority view, although not unanimous, as has been seen by the strong and welcome contribution by the Bishop of Salisbury. The so-called quadruple lock may have some chance of withstanding legal scrutiny in Europe, and we are grateful for it. Although other faith groups and Christian denominations who have written to me remain very hesitant. There have been useful discussions about the position of schools with a religious character and the issues of freedom of conscience. And I've noted the undertaking of the Noble Baroness, the Minister, on those subjects, and I'm grateful for what she has said. The Noble Baroness, the Minister, has also put forward all her views today with great courtesy and persuasive effect, and I join in the remarks of the Noble Baroness, Baroness Royal, in appreciation of that. And I have to say that personally I regret the necessity of having to deal with the possibility of a division at this stage on a bill passed by a free vote in the other place. I was particularly grateful to hear the speech of the Noble Baroness, Baroness Royal, and agree with the proud record that was established by the last government during the years in which it held office in this area. I also, if I may, will pass on her comments with gratitude to my colleague, the Most Reverend Prelate, the Archbishop of York. It is clearly essential that stable and faithful same-sex relationships should, where those involved want it, be recognised and supported with as much dignity and the same legal effect as marriage. Although the majority of bishops who voted during the whole passage of the Civil Partnerships Act through your Lordship's House were in favour of civil partnerships a few years ago, it is also absolutely true that the Church has often not served the LGBT communities in the way it should. I must express my sadness and sorrow for that considerable failure. There have been notable exceptions, such as my predecessor, Archbishop Ramsay, who vigorously supported decriminalisation in the 1960s. It is also necessary to express, as has been done already, total rejection of homophobic language, which is wrong, and more than that, sickening. However, I and many of my colleagues remain with considerable hesitations about this bill. My predecessor, Lord Williams of Oystermouth, showed clearly last summer, in evidence during the consultation period, that it has within it a series of category errors. It confuses marriage and weddings. It assumes that the rightful desire for equality, to which I've referred supportively, must mean uniformity, failing to understand that two things may be equal but different. And as a result, it does not do what it sets out to do, my lords. Schedule 4 distinguishes clearly between same-gender and opposite-gender marriage, thus not achieving true equality. The result is confusion. Marriage is abolished, redefined and recreated, being different and unequal for different categories. The new marriage of the bill is an awkward shape, with same gender and different gender categories scrunched into it, neither fitting well. The concept of marriage as a normative place for procreation is lost. The idea of marriage as covenant is diminished. The family in its normal sense predating the state and as our base community of society, as we've already heard, is weakened. These points will be expanded on by others in the debate, I'm sure, including those from these benches. For these and many other reasons, those of us in the churches and faith groups who are extremely hesitant about the bill in many cases hold that view because we think that traditional marriage is a cornerstone of society, and rather than adding a new and valued institution alongside it for same-gender relationships, which I would personally strongly support to strengthen us all, this bill weakens what exists and replaces it with a less good option that is neither equal nor effective. This is not a faith issue, although we are grateful for the attention that government and the other place have paid to issues of religious freedom. Deeply grateful. But it is not at heart a faith issue. It is about the general social good. And so, with much regret, but entire conviction, I cannot support the bill as it stands.
My Lords, I will be short. But first I would like to, if I may, congratulate the Most Reverend Primate on his speech. It was, as we might have guessed, impressive, well-argued, and above all, I think, compassionate. And so I thank him for that. I congratulate him on it, but I fear I disagree with his final conclusion. But before I get to that, perhaps I could deal, first of all, with the amendment proposed by the noble Lord Dear. My Lords, I have a deep respect for this House. I do not share the dismissive and frankly offensive views of the noble Lord Oakeshott on the Today programme this morning, which was the first interview I heard on returning and flying in from Washington just in time for this debate. What I accept and recognise is that this is an appointed house, and that is an enormous privilege to be appointed to it. But with that privilege comes limitations on what we can do. Of course we can question legislation and seek to improve it. But in my view, what we cannot do is defeat at second reading the declared will of the House of Commons when on a free vote, they have voted by over 2-1 to pass this legislation. And frankly, when Lord Dear doubts expresses views about the voting, I was in the Commons for 31 years. The allegations that he repeats sound very much like the consistent complaint made by those who have been defeated